Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going to go over the NHL 22 Team of the Year. I'm going to be reviewing the guys that are on the list, but more specifically today, we're going to go over the guys that got snubbed, the guys that should have been on the Team of the Year that weren't. We'll be going over all of that in today's video. So let's start off here with the forwards. Now, this is from NHL 22. Take it with a grain of salt. I still haven't even bought the game. Quite frankly, I really haven't had the time to play. But NHL 22, interesting to see the guys on this list. Now, the first couple guys, it's not going to surprise anybody all that much. You look at the top list of guys, it's the elite of the elite in today's NHL. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan MacKinnon, Austin Matthews, and Alexander Barkov. I don't think there's really too much to debate there. I think all of those guys have been extraordinarily good for their teams. Probably the best player on their team, except for the Oilers. It's McDavid. It's McDavid. The second tier of guys, you have Brad Marchand, Gabe Landeskog, Kirill Kaprizov, Artemi Panarin, and Alexander Ovechkin. You're not going to get any arguments from me on that front. And then the third tier guys, for forwards, you got Mikko Rantanen, Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, David Pastrnak, and Nikita Kucherov just gets on that list despite being injured here over the past really couple of weeks now. He has been in it long enough. He won the Stanley Cup earlier this year, so he makes the list. Now, who are some of the guys that got snubbed? Forwards in particular. Now, again, this is a list of 15 guys, so you're not going to get everybody on the list. I mean, that's just how it works. But some guys that got cheated, guys that got snubbed from this list. I named 3 forwards that got gypped from this list. Now, we're going to start off in Vancouver. The Vancouver Canucks, throughout this entire year to this date, their leading goal scorer is not Elias Pettersson. It's not Brock Besser. It's not Bo Horvat. It's JT Miller. JT Miller is the Vancouver Canucks' leading goal scorer, and there's been some questions about his locker room stuff recently in Vancouver, the fact he might get traded. But JT Miller is a very good hockey player and has been a huge part of the Canucks earlier this year and up until now. Now, the problem is the Canucks they didn't make the playoffs in 2021, and they didn't really play too well to start this year up until Bruce Boudreau came in. So maybe that's why JT Miller didn't get in. But you could argue, despite the lackluster talent around him, JT Miller played extraordinarily well, was almost a point-per-game player throughout last season, and was at a pretty nice clips this season. So, interesting to see him not on there, but again, I get because of the performance of the team overall wasn't there, you could argue that JT Miller got left off. Now, the other two, I think there is a lot more debate for because their teams were really good. They were one of the top point producers for their team, respectively, and they got left off the list. And starting off is Florida Panthers forward Jonathan Huberto. Jonathan Huberto has played extraordinarily well this year, a big piece of that top 6 for the Florida Panthers, one of the elites on that forward group there in Florida. Kind of interesting to see him so low. Again, you talk about, for a while the talk was always Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers is very underrated. Nobody talks about him. He's in Florida and not a traditional hockey market. If he was in Boston or New York or Toronto, he would get more attention. Now that Barkov's getting his love and attention and he was, the first tier guy on the forward list, now it's Jonathan Huberto who's kind of saying, where's my, accolades? He has been right there with Alexander Barkov through thick and thin there in the Sunrise State with the Panthers. This definitely seems like a snub in my opinion. I think he really should have been in there. He's in that category with guys like Mark Stone. And you could argue if Mark Stone's in there, if Kucherov's in there, Marner's in there, Rantanen's in there, to not put Huberto in there, I think is a little bit disingenuous. And again, I have my thoughts on that, but he is right on the cusp of that list. So I think that was a snub. Now, this is the other guy that I think is you can make the strongest argument for, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes forward, center, Sebastian Ajo. Sebastian Ajo has been so good in his time in Carolina. He's been the driving force of this team and one of the best finish forwards we've seen in a very, very long time. Sebastian Ajo is a guy that has pretty much been the franchise player in Carolina. They had a really solid season last year. They won the Central Division in 2021. They went on a nice playoff run. They lost in the second round to Tampa, but who didn't lose to Tampa? And, you know, it's one of those things to me where Carolina has been good this year, last year, but again, it's like the Florida Panthers thing. It's Carolina. It's Florida. Nobody really talks about them. And you end up getting a guy like Sebastian Ajo, in my opinion, getting snubbed of making that Team of the Year list. So that's my take on those three guys in particular. Definitely, again, JT Miller, you could have made an argument for him not to be in there. But Jonathan Huberto, Sebastian Ajo, they are in that same category of the players that were on that third tier list. They just didn't get in. They were probably just right on the brink of making it, but they got snubbed. And now looking at defensemen. Now, defense is a little bit interesting here too. So you've got Victor Hedman, Shea Theodore, Alec Martinez, so two Vegas guys, Darnell Nurse, Roman Josi, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Chris Letang, Tyson Barrie, and Jeff Petrie. So what's interesting about the defense is you got two Vegas Golden Knights defensemen, and none of them are named Alex Pietrangelo. I thought that was a little bit interesting. I think it's interesting Devon Toews didn't make that list, considering how good he was in 2021 for the Avalanche, and this season, again, he was injured for a little bit, but still, he was right there with Cale Makar. So it's interesting to see him not make the list. That was my honorable mention. And again, the Islander bias there, I guess, for Devon Toews that's always going to be there. But still, you could argue he's a top pairing defenseman and could easily be in that conversation. Now, three defensemen that got snubbed, robbed of making the Team of the Year. We're going to start off in Washington. John Carlson has quietly been having a very solid season once again with the Washington Capitals. I know John Carlson didn't have the best 2021 season, but he has followed that up with a great campaign this year for the Capitals. Not to mention, they've also been one of the best teams in that Metro Division, and that is saying something. They are a top 10 team in the NHL, in my opinion, this season. Maybe even a top 5 team. That's how good they have been. So, yeah, again, in my opinion, I think they got a little bit snubbed. And John Carlson is one of the leading defensemen in points this season. He is 4th in the NHL this season with points throughout the year of 2021. The leaders in that category since New Year's Day, earlier this year, Victor Hedman with 78 points, Adam Fox with 78 points, Cale Makar with 70, and right there, John Carlson, who you could argue is tied for second in the NHL for point-leading defenseman, and the fact he wasn't even in the conversation, that's robbery in my opinion. That's a snub. And nothing against guys like Tyson Barrie and Jeff Petrie. Come on, guys. No to John Carlson. Got me scratching my head a little bit there. A little bit surprised with that stat. Now another defenseman here. He has actually had a breakout season here, really, to start this year, and that is the Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman, Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly's been with the organization now for almost a decade, but Morgan Rielly has definitely, you could tell, he's matured a little bit since last year, and he obviously just signed that huge extension, I think a $7.5 million contract. That's a bargain. And a guy that's going to be in the conversation for the Norris Trophy this year. You could argue a top 5 finalist through the first quarter of the season. Morgan Rielly has been extremely good for the Leafs. He's been their top defenseman. Other than Jake Muzzin, it's been him and Jake Muzzin. Morgan Rielly, again, is a guy that has always had... he's always been under the gun for some defensive mistakes and just weird... mistakes that you don't expect from an NHL defenseman, but Morgan Rielly has definitely worked on that, and he's gotten better with some of those things like gap control and keeping his stick in the right place, blocking passing lanes and stuff like that, and just his overall game on a day-to-day basis. The maturity level has definitely grown for Morgan Rielly, so it's no question that he should be on that list. Another defenseman here I have is the Florida Panthers captain, Is he the captain? No, he's an assistant captain. I apologize. The captain is Barkov. But I always get the vibe from Aaron Ekblad that he is the captain of this team. He was the first overall pick a couple years back in the NHL draft. Played with the Barrie Colts of the OHL. Aaron Ekblad, there was always high expectations for Ekblad in the NHL. And for a while, there was a little stretch here where you were thinking, this guy, what happened to Ekblad? A first overall pick, and he's starting to kind of crumble here in his mid to late 20s. Aaron Ekblad seems to be coming back to form and has been extremely impressive this year. A couple of more veteran moves that he's made. It was a game against the Flyers. He took Joel Farabee and flew it up out of his hands. I've made that move myself. But that is, that is the level that Ekblad's at now. He's not necessarily, obviously he's a gym workout horse. He's in good shape and stuff. But Aaron Ekblad is much better at his mental game of hockey. And an example like that, taking advantage of a younger guy, not necessarily a rookie in Joel Farabee, but in that overtime game, I'm sure my Panthers fans know what I'm talking about. That was really impressive. And that's the kind of stuff that you're not going to see from a first or second, or even, for that matter, a third-year NHL player. He just knew that he could get Joel Farabee on that one. And that's the kind of stuff where that's what separates the young guys from the older guys. It's not necessarily the skill. The skill gap is so slim, if there is any at all. It's that kind of stuff. It's the gamesmanship in the game. It's the chess match in the actual game and stuff like that from Aaron Ekblad. He's definitely a leader for the Florida Panthers. He's one of those bigger, the big dogs on that group. And again, this team has been very successful. A very good run last year. They lost to Tampa, but they're really, they really had a great first 2 or 3 months this year. And Aaron Ekblad, again, like Morgan Riley, is in the conversation for the Vezina Trophy. Maybe he is the best goalie this year. The Norris Trophy for best defenseman this year. Definitely a snub there. Also, kind of like Devontae's, wanted to give an honorable mention to Quinn Hughes, who is in the same list of top 5 defensemen in terms of point leaders this season since January 1st. And that's Quinn Hughes. So right behind John Carlson and Cale Makar with 70 points, sitting right behind them is the Canucks defenseman, Quinn Hughes. He has 67 points throughout this calendar year, and he's just always been a good defenseman. There's really, when you talk about the Canucks, it's never Quinn Hughes. It's the depth on defense. It's even, I hate to say it, the guys like Besser, Horvat, Pettersson. It's more on those guys. You never hear really people talking about Quinn Hughes not being a good player. He is always there. He's always in the right spots. Graduated from the University of Michigan. Quinn Hughes has been just really, again, a guy that is under the radar because the Canucks haven't been that great in, earlier in 2021 and so far here to end 2021. But as a singular player, it's incredible that, again, this isn't a discredit to Jeff Petrie or Tyson Barrie, but to leave Quinn Hughes off that list for Team of the Year, that's an interesting move there by the NHL. And now we get to the goalie side of things. So, goalies is an interesting conversation here, too. Lost my voice earlier singing. So, give me a second here, guys. Don't ask what I was singing. It's better off you guys don't know that. But the Team of the Year goaltenders, we got 5 goalies here. And we still have some snubs. Team of the Year goalies, we got Philip Grubauer of the Seattle Kraken. Half of that was spent with the Avalanche in the beginning of 2021. Connor Hellebuck of the Winnipeg Jets, always a Vezina finalist. I'm always, singing his praises. He's very good. Jack Campbell has had a very good 2021 earlier this season up to now with the Maple Leafs. Jacob Markstrom in Calgary, all that injury stuff he went through last season in 2020 going into this year. There was a lot of questions when he left Vancouver. Is he going to be able to stay healthy? He leads the NHL right now in 5 shutouts. No surprise there. And Andrei Vasilevsky leads the NHL in wins for the 2021-22 season with 17. So there's no real surprise he's on this list. You're not going to hear any arguments from me for any of these 5 guys. Maybe except Philip Grubauer, because he did have some struggles here in the beginning of his tenure in Seattle earlier this season. But he still could be in that conversation with how things went in Colorado. And again, even in Colorado, there were some questions about Philip Grubauer. So now that I'm looking at it, Grubauer is interesting there. Now, there's 3 goalies here that I think got snubbed, got robbed, just flat out gypped. And we're going to start off with the New York Rangers, Igor Shesterkin. Now, the fact he plays with the Rangers, with how good they have been here this current season, I'm surprised that the recency bias doesn't factor in here at all. He also, despite a bad season for the Rangers in 2021, he was still a huge piece of the Rangers. So, kind of disingenuous to not see him on that list. I'm very surprised that he's not there. And even you saw earlier this month when the Rangers were without Shesterkin, just how much they miss him. I thought it was interesting that he didn't crack that list. So that's robbery in my opinion. He's top 5, top 10 in goals against average, save percentage through at least 10 games played. That's a flat out snub in my opinion. This is another, all 3 of these guys really could be flat out snubs in my opinion with really no question. I think these guys got snubbed. The Vegas Golden Knights. Now again, this is bias. Islander fan, former Islander here, Robin Leonard. Robin Leonard has very low key, and somebody tweeted something about this earlier this week. Is Robin Leonard the most underrated goalie in the NHL? I completely believe that. Now the thing is, everybody says, well, Vegas is so good and this and that. No, but like Robin Leonard is the real deal. He is a very good goalie in the right system. And Pete DeBoer has a very good defensive system there, no doubt. You do need a good defense still in front of you. But Robin Leonard as a goalie, he's not the prototypical goalie. He's much more of a stand-up goalie. He's not the most agile goalie. He kind of just puts his big body in front of it, and that's it. He's not doing any big leg flipping things. I don't even know if he could do a full split. No, I'm kidding. I've seen him do it. But still, Robin Leonard, really good goalie. And again, I'm kind of surprised he didn't make the list. Now, again, I know Vegas isn't first in their Pacific Division and this and that. They haven't gone on that crazy winning streak yet. But I think Robin Leonard, despite all the injuries they had earlier this year, thank you. That's exactly what I need right now. Robin Leonard has been the backbone of that team throughout a lot of key injuries that they had earlier in the 2021-22 NHL season. And then to cap this thing off, I'm wearing the jersey of... No, that's the other jersey. Well, I have a Pekka Rinne jersey. The predecessor to Pekka Rinne, the heir to the throne in Nashville. It's UC Soros of the Nashville Predators. It's taken 2 or 3 years now as the backup behind Rinne for UC Soros, the Finnish goalie, to kind of take over. But we have seen him take over this year. And it also helps having a pretty good backup in David Rittich behind him. But UC Soros kind of had his breakout earlier this year and has kind of just followed that up into this season. The Nashville Predators, you could argue, one of the best teams in the NHL right now. Definitely a top 10 team in the league. They're currently on a super long winning streak, a 7-game winning streak. So UC Soros, man, is a huge factor in all of that for the Preds. And despite what I think of their coaching staff, I'm not a huge fan of John Hines as the head coach. You can't deny the 7-game winning streak and the really successful seasons they've had recently. The Predators are still a pretty good team in their own right and should definitely have the respect. And UC Soros, again, just not getting the respect. And again, partially maybe because the Rangers, the Predators, the Golden Knights haven't had a lot of recent... Again, you can't even say that though. I don't understand how they do this. And again, I hate to key out like defensemen like Barry and Petrie or Grubauer, but you're almost going with the names that have been good for the last couple years. What about the guy that was really good this year? And I think they dropped the ball on a couple of these. So NHL, what are you doing here? You're missing out on some really good players that you left off your list. So that is my list of guys that got robbed, snubbed, put in the doghouse. These guys that should have been in the team of the year that weren't. At the end of the day, none of these guys really care. I don't think I know some of the guys play NHL, but they want to win a Stanley Cup in 22. That is their focus. So at the end of the day, all these individual accolades or whatever, you could argue winning some trophies gets you some more money on your next payday. But other than that, team of the year in NHL 22 isn't going to make or break, or at the very least, I hope it doesn't make these guys cry at night knowing they didn't make the team. But just go out and prove them wrong. If anything, this gives you motivation to some of these guys who I think will definitely be there next year if they take this the right way. So guys, that is it for today's video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and let's go Preds.